Here's to all the late night drunk phone calls that you picked up. Here's to all the bad decisions that you didn't judge. All the love yous and the hate yous and secrets that you told me. Here's to everyone but mostly us. There's a couple billion people in the world, and a million other places we could be, but you're here with me. Take a moment just to take it in, 'cause every high and every low led to this. I'm just so glad you exist. Hey, look what a hello from a stranger turned into. Caught up in a moment like it's just us in this room. All the right words at the right time, and you know them 'cause you know me better than anyone else. Well, we don't need anyone else. There's a couple billion people in the world, and a million other places we could be, but you're here with me.
Hey guys, it's Marisol with Soul Stitchery, and today we're talking about the next step in our Live Boldly quilt, right? So today I'm going to do some cutting. I've got all of my colors cut, and I'll put them over here so you can see all of these pretty fabrics that we've got. The Live Boldly pattern is kind of a rainbow and black, white, and gray. Kind of like that. And you can see a picture of it. I will post a picture on the cover of this video so you can see it up close and see what it looks like. It's a really pretty quilt. And it seems like it'd be pretty easy to put together. So let's go through this, shall we? I have to cut a certain size of block out of each color of these fabrics. So I've picked my rainbow-ish kind of colors. I've got my shades of gray and black, and I have my white here. So I'm going to just slip this back over here, and we're going to start with yellow today. And one of the blocks that we make in this pattern is a half square triangle. The other unit that we make is, I think we call that a 3/4 square triangle. Not really 100% sure. I'll find out the right name and post it and put it here on the video so you can see what it's called. However, the cutting instructions in this pattern are super clear, super clear. She gives us plenty of instruction. So I am just going to talk right now about cutting technique. So a couple different things. I have a bunch of different size rulers. I'm working with a smaller cut of fabric. This isn't a full yard, but I do want a ruler that's going to go, that's going to cover my fabric with the fabric. So I'm going to go with my long ruler. We talked about this a few videos ago. I do like a wider ruler because I have bigger hands. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some different ways to anchor your ruler. This is a Creative Grids ruler. They have a patent on the back of their rulers. It's a little bit, you can hear it, it's a little textured. And so what that does is it allows the ruler to be a little bit more grippy. Not too grippy. You want your ruler to slide, but not too shifty either. I prefer these rulers. These are the ones I carry in the shop because they're my favorite ruler. But you use whatever ruler you have. There's a bunch of really great brands out there, whatever you choose to use. And we're going to talk about a couple different ways of anchoring the ruler when I cut, as well as gadgets that you can use to anchor the ruler. So I'll be right back and we'll start talking about some gadgets. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about how we cut. I know it's pretty basic, but if you're a new quilter, if you're a beginner, these things are things that I wished I would have known when I first started quilting, and I wish somebody would have talked about. So one of the things that I struggled with in the beginning was how to place my hands on the ruler, how to use my rotary cutter specifically, and what I could do to kind of anchor that ruler down, right? So there's a couple different ways to do this. I'm not going to actually cut this fabric. I'm just going to show you a couple of different placements. One of the things that I talked about the other day was measuring and cutting, and how to place your hand on this ruler so that you can cut safely and accurately. So many of you will have the 6-inch wide or 6.5 inch by 24.5 inch. Mine is 8.5 It's just the one I like because I have big hands. I like to spread my fingers, and I like to have a ruler that's a little bit wider. I tend to cut bigger pieces, and so this is much more effective for me. However, even if you have a 6.5 inch wide ruler, if you place your hand this way, it should fit nicely. So what I do, I'm not going to open the rotary cutter, it's sealed and it's safe, is I begin to cut here, and I do not go past the tips of my fingers when I'm cutting. So when I get to about where my thumb is right here, I do this kind of spider walk up here, and then I finish cutting. And that keeps me safe. It keeps me accurate because my ruler will not wiggle. The other thing is to be really careful when you're cutting that you're not leaning this way with the ruler or leaning this way with the ruler. Make sure that ruler is nice and perpendicular to the mat that you're cutting on. So straight up and down this way, all the way to the top. And again, if you cut past your fingers, you're gonna have a tendency to swing that ruler over this way. So just be super careful. Once you get to about there, you're gonna wanna do that little spider walk and cut, and then spider walk again and cut to the end. Safest, most accurate way to use your rotary cutter. If you have a fresh blade in there, which you should at the start of every project, then your razor will be, your rotary cutter will be super sharp. So there's no need to press down really hard because that will save your mat if you use less pressure. So using a new fresh blade is better for all of your supplies, right? Less waste of fabric because you're making a nice sharp cut. You don't have to recut anything. You don't have to trim edges because everything is going to be nice and crisp. It also keeps that mat from wearing out because if you've got a self-healing mat and you have a nice sharp rotary cutter, the mat will automatically heal with no nicks or burrs in it. So that's one way, is the spider walk. The other way that I've seen online, and I learned from a tutorial, is the leaning, the elbow lean. So you'd have to stand up to do that because you're going to want some leverage from the elbow to the top of the fingers. And the reason that the elbow lean works really good is because it keeps pressure on the length of the ruler, and you don't have to do the spider walk. So you don't have to take the chance that during walking your fingers like that you might shift the ruler a little bit. So you lean your elbow towards the left-hand edge of the ruler. You put your hand down here. You give it a nice firm pressure. And again, I'm not opening the cutter because I need to measure this and cut it appropriately. But you start at the bottom, not a lot of pressure. Don't lean one way or another. You're going to keep that rotary cutter nice and straight, and you're just going to move all the way up to here and then to the end and cut, okay? That should give you a nice straight edge, an accurate cut, little to no shifting of the ruler. Last but not least, I want to show you this guy. Now, I'm a big fan of buying things at the hardware store, at the box stores that are not necessarily quilt objects, right? So there is an item like this that is sold as a quilt notion. It is very cute and pretty, I'm sure. I got this one at one of the big box stores. I think it was like a Walmart or maybe even Target. I don't remember. There's no adhesive here. This is nothing sticky. It is silicone, and they are suction cups. And basically what you do is you stick that on your ruler like this, and then you clip these down tight like that, and voila. It holds your ruler for you so you can move it in different places. If you are only measuring, or if you're using your mat to measure and then using your ruler as like a straight edge, this is a great gadget because you don't need to read the markings, right? You're just using it as a straight line. Super nice because you can hold that pressure steady in the middle and cut right along, and you never have any shifting because it's like an even distribution of pressure on the ruler. This guy I bought a while ago. I think it cost me like $17.99 or something like that. Sometimes they come in a set of 2. I have only ever found the use on the long ruler. I don't have any other rulers that I really use it with, but for cutting, if you're cutting strips especially, super, super handy. You can place it anywhere you need to on the ruler. So I can peel it off like that, right? And then I can scooch it over right to the edge. If I want to cut a 4-inch strip here, I just clamp this guy down like so. It's kind of hard to push those levers, but it's very sucky, so it stays stuck. Now I can see all of these markings, and I can cut up to like a 4.5-inch strip right through this ruler, just looking that way. Now remember that my pressure is going to be on this side, so it's going to be kind of off. But if I'm measuring with the ruler, I can still use this gadget to hold it steady and straight. Not sure what it's called, but again, I'll put a link in the description so you guys can find it if you choose to. This is not a Quilty brand anything. I bought this at a box store, if I recall. The cool thing is you can wipe these down with a little dish liquid and warm water, rinse them off, let them dry, good as gold. So that's another gadget of how to hold the ruler steady. Make sure that you always have sharp rotary blades in your rotary cutter. Make sure that your rulers don't have any nicks or imperfections along the edge, and happy cutting. So that's the cutting gadgets. I'm going to get to cutting these pieces, and we'll start talking about how to put the pieces together, how to line them up correctly. One quick thing I did want to cover while we're talking about fabric and fabric pieces. And so sometimes you'll order fabric, and especially if you order it online, you might get the beginning of the bolt or an end of the bolt. And so you're going to have an edge that is not perfect. And then you'll have an edge that's the cut edge. Sometimes both edges will be straight, nice and straight. However, it's important to look at the drape of your fabric. So watch what happens. If I have an uneven edge and I try to drape this, do you see that fold in there, that little wrinkle that happens? That means that my fabric right now, even though there's a fold on it at the bottom where the bolt fold was, it is not straight of grain. Generally speaking, there's several different techniques to get fabric straight of grain. Some people rip. I do not rip. I don't have the heart to do that. But what I do is I try to get it as straight as I can when I get a piece like this. So what I'll do is at the top, if I shift, and I'll show you how I do this, I put my finger in between the two pieces of fabric, and then I just slide my thumb and forefinger back and forth to kind of shift the fabric this way or this way. So I'm kind of rolling the back end, and I want to shift it until I get no fold. See how there's no crease in there now? That's pretty straight of grain. You can see that the fold is now in a little bit of a different place. I also have edges that don't match on both sides. So one part of the fabric is a little shorter than the other. It's kind of off kilter if you think of it that way. However, although it's off kilter on the fold and on the sides are not matching up, I am straight of grain because I don't have that crease that you saw in the fabric when it was folded. So this would be the best way to cut this fabric so that I know that I'm cutting straight of grain. I have a little tiny bit, maybe a 1/4 inch of waste on this side and about the same on that side, but my fold and my fabric will be perfectly straight of grain. And that's when I'll start doing my cutting. So easy to do with small pieces like this. Bigger, longer pieces, if you're dealing with like a 2-yard piece of fabric, you're going to have a heck of a time holding it like that and kind of lining it up. That's why people will tear, because that tear will bring it right down onto straight of grain. You definitely need to have some extra fabric, right? You definitely need to have more than what you're going to use. If you're ordering a kit, you may not have enough to rip. So maybe we'll do another video on another time on how best to find straight of grain and why that's important, because sometimes straight of grain is a little stretchy across the grain, is tight and not stretchy at all. So there's some different things to look out for, and we'll do a tutorial video on those things as far as grain and warp and weft and what that means if